Most people do not realize that the air is not transparent. We will use transparent sheets for our example. Also, we will use lighting gels for the water and lower water line. This will simulate the horizon the way it is on Earth. Each sheet should represent several miles. The key people need to understand is that the horizon you see is not the exact horizon. If there was no air, no water, or anything else, the horizon would be lower on a perfectly flat plane. People misuse the word vanishing point and perspective in the flat Earth movement, and here I will prove how it works. The first concept is air density. Have you ever driven on a foggy day? You can't see 2 feet in front of you sometimes. Or take this example of the Chicago skyline from what should have been an impossible 40 miles away. Some people ask why the buildings are cut off, but isn't it obvious? Here you can see a cloud of air. What they should have asked themselves is, why can you see the buildings at all if the Earth is not flat? Now, what is very important to understand is, air compounds. Every mile, there is more air to look through. This forms a gradient. When we put several sheets of clear plastic in front of the other, they form a wall that you cannot see through. The atmosphere is filled with oxygen, zinc, carbon, hydrogen, and many other chemicals that forms a wall of density. Let's watch the experiment in action. As you can see, the sun gets cut off from the bottom first. But that's not all. There's many things to discover in this experiment. First of all, you can see the light shrink around the sun as it sets. This is exactly what we see in real life. When the sun sets in our experiment, we see a color change, just like real sunsets. One major difference in our experiment is it's on a small scale and it's low budget. The advantage is you can do this yourself at home. We will now compare to the horizon you see daily, but before we do, we want you first to understand perspective. As you can see, things that move to the horizon get smaller and lower. However, the appearance that they are getting lower is just perspective. You prove this by looking at a long hallway. The altitude of every light in the hallway is the same, right? Some people think in the flat Earth that when things hit the horizon they diverge due to optics. And although that's a very interesting idea, we're only working with logical things that we can prove in an experiment. With air density, you can prove sunsets without fancy diverging lines, however true they may be. You can see in our experiment we have lower atmosphere, middle atmosphere, and high atmosphere. Did you know that the air gets thinner as you get higher? This is because of buoyancy. You see things that are less dense separate from things of greater density. This is why clouds float, this is why helium balloons rise. This forms a vertical gradient and gives us a horizontal and vertical air gradient. In fact, the speed at how fast things fall depends entirely on buoyancy. If you drop an item in the water, it falls much slower than in low altitude air. If you fall from a high altitude, you fall faster. When you jump from air into water, you fall fast and then slow. Now we combine all 3 ideas, and you will get this. Right at the horizon there is a 10 to 20 mile high wall of air. The wall of air depends on weather. Remember, it's a vertical and horizontal gradient. Think of it like a diagonal wall or a ramp to heaven. On high humidity, the wall will be closer. On low humidity, the wall will be further, sometimes hundreds of miles. The air compounds. Well, let's just say the sun sets beyond that wall. It goes behind it. Remember how we said that the further things go, the smaller and lower they appear? Well, right at the horizon, an extremely thin line represented here is the vanishing point. This is about a 10 to 20 mile high wall of air. Also, remember there's clouds as well blocking you in the way. Remember the buoyancy idea? Well, the high altitude air is thinner, so the wall is a little bit further. This is why the sun changes colors before it sets on a clear day. It gets blocked by the buoyant air, and then its bottom is cut off by the heavier air. Now you might be thinking, Can a 10 to 20 mile high wall of air seriously block the sun when it's thousands of miles away? Well, of course, and here's a diagram of exactly what you're experiencing. You can see the observer and a line drawn to the horizon. The sun gets cut off when it's thousands of miles away. This isn't to scale, but you get the idea. You can even do the math for this if you like. Draw a triangle, imagine the horizon line vanishing point is about 50 to 100 miles away. Then you will see, even if the sun is high, it will fall into the horizon. In our experiment, what you won't see is how dramatic of an effect the air has on the sun. It tends to dilate the sun's diameter. This is why when you see a sunset, it doesn't shrink as much as it should. It does shrink, but it also dilates. And if you film the sunset from a high and dry altitude, it'll shrink a lot more. Including if you watch sunset time lapses from airplanes, you'll see the sun shrink. I also want to take the opportunity to answer some very uneducated criticisms of the Flat Earth movement. People say, "Why can't you see New York from England?" Well, you can answer them in a word: air. Also, there's questions like, "Why can't you see northern stars from the south?" Again, air. Also, let's look at ships on the horizon with this refreshed perspective. What density also affects is the water line. Look at this diagram again. Did you know that the air above the water is filled with more water vapor? Well, of course, right? Buoyancy. So that may not seem important, but it's of huge importance in optics. Imagine if I used these blue gels instead of transparent gels. Would you be able to tell the difference between the water line and thousands of these gels stacked together, compounded over many miles? Let's look at some examples. You can see here the boat is almost invisible. Here, the air almost completely blocks it. From far away, this air is dense with water and even reflects the water below. This higher waterline effect can cause boats to not be visible and even cause a slightly higher waterline occluding the bottom of buildings and beaches. Remember, over the ocean there is waves too. The water in the air sometimes causes a sparkling, wavy fractal pattern when you zoom in on it. This is why using examples such as the Bolivian salt flats, Mount Everest, and other land examples are in some ways better for proving that there is no curve. Since you also need to educate people on compounded water vapor. Also, the water line can cause boats to look like they are floating and other really funny visual effects. Now imagine looking at a sunset over the ocean and what all that air does to the horizon. Well, surely it would cause a vanishing point. Also, clouds compounded add to the long list of obstructions in the horizon. Again, for further research, you should look at converging and diverging lines of perspective on the horizon. Perhaps we can consider the curvature of the lens of our eye and even a camera lens as well to play into this. The sunset we see on the Earth matches one on a flat Earth because of the diameter change of the sun, the shrinking light of the sun, and the sun's path in the sky. However, there are already so many videos debunking a round Earth and proving a flat one, and if you have seen this video up until this point, I would love it if you would do more research on the subject. When searching for the truth, it doesn't matter if the world disagrees with you. If you are right, and the truth will set you free. Sheep follow the government blindly. Nobody listens to the black sheep because the black sheep is not in a position of authority. But the black sheep sees something, doesn't he? Science done honestly is beautiful, and hopefully I have shared a beautiful idea with you. So hopefully this video was educational. Thanks, and hopefully now we can put the issue of sunsets to rest.
Isn't flat. And by the way, this is called gravity.
is gravity?
You have no idea. Okay, next question.
What is gravity?
You have no idea. Okay, next question.
Wow.
No, here's the difference. We can describe gravity. We can say what it does to other things. We can measure it, predict with it. But when you start asking, like, what it is, I don't know.
The flat Earth model, all of the heavenly bodies are orbiting the magnetic center of the known universe, which is fixed at our North Pole, the magnetic center. Since we live on a flat Earth, a compass needle will always be attracted to the center of the world, not the top of the globe. This attraction to the center is apparent even when in the southern hemisphere. So the heavenly celestial bodies are orbiting us, and we're stationary. This means there's some type of force causing these bodies to be weightless and orbit us. I think the ancient builders were probably aware of this principle, and it explains how they were able to build structures such as the pyramids. If you're familiar with the Coral Castle down in Florida, a single man built a castle made of extremely heavy rocks very quickly and with almost no help or machinery. He never disclosed his method, but I suspect it had something to do with this magnetic energy that causes the moon and the sun to orbit us. Indeed, I believe that Nikola Tesla was aware of this force, and so he was able to invent free wireless energy and wireless communications, but more importantly, wireless energy, well before the internet was even close to being theorized. So even newfangled zero-point energy fields, which are being researched by very fringe scientists, seems to be akin to this electromagnetic force, which is causing these celestial bodies to orbit us. Who knows? Also, the relationship with the Earth and the Moon is demonstrably of the electromagnetic variety, and certainly nothing like gravity would explain, without all the major coincidences, of course. So, if the Moon is orbiting us in response to an electromagnetic phenomena, it makes a lot of sense that one face of the Moon would be attracted to the face of our world, and that would perfectly explain that one face being ever present. Furthermore, since the Moon is a lot closer in the flat Earth model, it makes sense that its electromagnetic pull would affect the world's oceans. If you take a balloon and rub it against your hair, and then take that statically charged balloon near a running tap with water, the water will bend. This proves that our tides could indeed be caused by the Moon's electromagnetic field, or possibly a static electric charge, but not a gravity field. Indeed, if the Moon were close enough to pull on our oceans with its measly gravity, the much greater Earth gravity should have pulled the Moon into our world a long time ago. This proves the conventional model is totally wrong and not just unlikely. And it proves there's a logically sound, verifiable alternative to the conventional accepted model. At any rate, on the flat Earth, gravity is not necessary. Gravity was a theory dreamed up to explain why we're not flung from the surface of the Earth at 1,000 miles per hour. Since our world is demonstrably not spinning, then we don't need gravity in our model. What goes up must come down is a law of physics. Gravity is a theory necessary only in the globe model. In the flat Earth model, what goes up must come down is explained sufficiently by the simple laws of density and buoyancy. Lighter, less dense objects find their way up, while heavier, denser objects find their way down. It's the natural order of things, and there's no need for gravity to explain it. If you take a beach ball filled with air, for example, and try to hold it underwater, you'll notice that it's difficult to hold it underwater, and it gets more and more difficult the deeper you get. When you let go of the ball, it will race to the surface of the water. So I suppose we should believe that the beach ball is somehow an anti-gravity device. It's beneath the water with all that pressure above it, plus all the gravity, in quotes, gravity pushing down on it. The beach ball should remain underwater according to the theory of gravity. However, it invariably races to the top because it's simply acting in accordance with the natural laws of buoyancy or density. Same thing with a hot air balloon. It's about temperature, density. The North Star Polaris is indeed a proof that the model is wrong and not just a crazy coincidence that needs to be explained in the globe model. You simply cannot argue the North Star could maintain such an alignment for any duration given our arbitrary, wobbly North Pole in your model. The North Star is simply at the very top of the celestial bodies orbiting above us and has the tightest path around the center. That's the only explanation for how it remains fixed in alignment with our North Pole forever, or for any duration whatsoever.
Now, Einstein was once asked how it felt to be the smartest man alive, and Einstein's reply was, "I don't know. You'll have to ask Nikola Tesla." So now I'm going to go over, talk to Nikola Tesla, and see what he has to say. He tells me today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments. And they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. I mean, how true could that statement be? Nikola Tesla is the true genius. He says Einstein's relativity work is a magnificent mathematical garb which fascinates, dazzles, and makes people blind to the underlying errors. The theory is like a beggar clothed in purple, whom ignorant people take for a king. Its exponents are brilliant men, but they are metaphysicists rather than scientists. Oh, well, thank you, Tesla, for telling us how much bull can be found in Einstein's work, because you knew that way back then. So thank you for reassuring my belief system, right? So if gravity doesn't exist, then what's the force that pulls us down to the earth? Why do things fall down instead of up? And the answer is electromagnetism.
Researcher and author Anthony Patch states, quote, "In short, the accurate model of the mechanisms governing the functioning of our known universe is that of electromagnetism, not gravity. What is mistaken for and therefore labeled as gravity are in fact, and this has been thoroughly peer-reviewed, magnetic lines of force and the actions of accelerated charged particles moving at various velocities. Additionally, these same electromagnetic forces act in identical fashion, whether one is measuring actions taking place between particles at the quantum level or on a planetary scale. What has been detected by LIGO and other similar experiments preceding it are in fact magnetic lines of force and the movements and actions of accelerated charged particles, such as electrons and protons, among many others. As for black holes, supermassive twin